So 2017 to 2018 were the years where I found myself getting more into the Sonic series. I still had exposure to the series through the classics, All-Stars Racing and Colors, but this is where things went into full steam. I got Adventure 2 and Heroes, played Mania on launch day, the rest of the boost games on Forces release, and rounding off for the rest of them until Adventure 1 2 years ago. By then I had played all the main 3D Sonic games. Except one. Sonic OR. Now is Lost World. Sonic Lost World is probably the most divisive main Sonic game as of recent. Some say it's underrated and want them to continue the formula, whilst others strongly hate it, but don't hate it as much as Forces somehow. Now I couldn't/can't be able to properly play this because I don't have a Wii U, nor a PC that can run Steam games. So the only way I can experience this is through the 3DS version, which people don't talk about as much, but from what I had heard, it wasn't that good. So last year I played it for the first time and remember not liking it as much. But now I decided to do a revisit to see if it's bad as I remember it. So Lost World's 3DS gameplay is obviously rather different than previous games. Its movement doesn't have the tank-like feeling of Generations, and does feel close to the adventure style. The whole run button and lesson speed wasn't really an issue for me, and most times it feels alright to move. Apparently it controls better here than the Wii U version, so I guess that might be a plus. The homing attack can be the most awkward part of the game, specifically the sections where you have to charge it up, but I think it works best during the boss stages, where you have the chance to deal more damage quicker. The moments where you bounce on multiple enemies at once looks cool though, at least. There are also more hint icons than the Wii U version, so the game still guides you on what and where to go, complete with a tutorial level. The spin dash functions alright, and the controls sort of feel smooth at times, especially when going through the longer pathways. Ranking all the 3D spin dashes, I'd say it's the best it's been since Adventure 2, but it doesn't have the overpowered feeling Adventure 1 had, where you could spam it repeatedly. Oh yeah, parkour was the thing this introduced.
Parkour! 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 Parkour!
This isn't too bad of a gameplay mechanic, but it does feel a bit rough at times, but for me at least it works. There are those awkward moments where you'll try to jump through a wall, but it won't properly respond in time. Frozen Factory also includes a snowboarding level, which isn't too bad, but actually has better snowboarding physics than 06 if that's saying anything. Level design for Lost World is definitely debatable. Early on they feel spacious, but other scenarios are not as fun to traverse. But the 2D levels definitely feel mostly off here. Some of them handle well, but others have odd sections and certain puzzle-like areas to progress. If you like puzzle sections in levels, it's okay, but they lack the speed in other 2D sections for other Sonic games, which is unusual considering the DIMSA involvement, and they've mostly always excelled with 2D/handheld Sonic. One of the few levels that feels close to Rush's level style is Silent Forest Act 3, where you're grinding on rails. There are rails that are electric that you can't grind on unless you have the Ivory Lightning Wisp or Super. It's an alright level, but it's slowed down by some of the platforming sections. You have to time the wall jump, and for some reason it doesn't work accurately here. The length of each level varies depending on how you play through some of them. Some range from 4 to 5 minutes to almost 16 minutes on your first run. And these longer levels can really bring down the enjoyment. The worst being in Frozen Factory 3, where you push snowballs around and it's very awkward to traverse. I don't really understand why Sega would go back to the slower pace for Sonic levels, knowing that was a contributing factor in Warhog's flaws. It's unfortunate because the first two worlds have a clear focus in level design, but afterwards it just goes a little bit off the rails. Even some of the more simple levels feel off at times due to the way the physics sometimes act. The best puzzle-themed level would probably be Tropical Coast Act 2, where you push giant apples, but there are odd moments where you'll try to stun an enemy, get hit, only to get knocked off the platform and sink to the bottom. Like I said, the levels are playable, but the layout of them just doesn't feel right to me. Gone from the Wii U version is animal collecting, which slowed down level progress. However, instead levels have capsules containing springs and wisps that can be opened once a certain animal/enemies defeated/collected. There's nothing too different to most 6 Unleashed with their enemy system. At the end of each level, you gain material which can be brought to Tails, and he can give you accessories to help in the level if you die enough times. These include a gold armature that collects rings, a rocket that shoots enemies for you, and a balloon to fly over certain areas. One significant item included is the hover car, which can be used freely unless you skip over really huge sections of levels. Like, it's pretty much near broken. There's one instance where I exited out too suddenly and ended up glitching out. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. It's a cool add-on, but I never really bothered with them unless I really needed them. Backers always had wisps, which I don't mind too much. Most of them function normally like the drill and laser, which act how they did in Colors. But then you have scenarios like the rock wisp where it's not fun to control. You have to try and use the 3DS's gyroscope controls, where you have to be in the right position to control and tilt it from rolling off the stage. Sega used to really like implementing motion controls into a lot of Sonic games, and most of the times it would usually backfire. The gyroscope functions well in certain levels like the Zora battle, but most times you'll be twisting your whole body around while sitting and circling around. This is especially common later on in the special stages, but I'll get to them. The bosses in the game range from being rather simple to tedious, especially with Lava Mountain where it's just a boss rush. I do like the final boss though, and it does have some challenge. It also does the same thing Colors did where Eggman uses Wisp powers against you, albeit a bit more simpler. Also, the final boss theme still kicks ass. Speaking of which, the music in the game isn't anything too special, but the few tracks that stand out are decent, like the main Windy Hill one, Sea Bottom Siege, Honeycomb Highway, Frozen Factory, and the aforementioned final boss theme. After you beat the final boss, you can play hard mode versions of each level. It doesn't change anything too major besides giving you limited rings, extra enemies, plus some levels have extra sections. It isn't anything near the level of difficulty as Unleash's DLC if you're expecting something on that level, but it's a cool addition if you want something extra post-game. Also, there's no DLC, which is unfortunate, but understandable. Though it would have been interesting to see a version of the Zelda DLC released for it. There's Versus mode where you can race against other players both local and online. I don't have a second 3DS, and let's be fair, no one else is playing this online in 2020 other than myself. There's also online rankings which lets you post your fastest times and see people who are better at the game than you.
Melvin, brother of the Joker.
Now there's the special stages, which are definitely the most strangest the series has had. Its usual layout of collecting a certain amount of multicolored spheres, except you have to use gyroscope to control Sonic. Like I said, you'll be fully twisting around to get them, and it's really awkward to aim accurately. You'll have to be properly standing up just to use these stages most times. I think this sort of control style would work better for say a Knights game, but here it doesn't really work. And I remember it being super annoying in my original playthrough. Is it worth going through the stages just to get Supersonic? Kind of. It makes the levels sometimes easier, and Supersonic's physics do feel a bit floaty at times, but there's no cake bonus I guess. Also you can use Supersonic to perform shortcuts during speedruns.
Let me tell you a little story.
Anyways, I think it's time to finally get to the story. And yes, I am aware that Sonic writing post-Black Knight hasn't been the best. Some of the jokes aren't perfect, characters aren't portrayed accurately enough, they fly now, I've heard the story over and over again. I don't mind the writing of the other games at this point, they're so and so, but I'd probably say Lost World has the worst story for this era. Firstly, this has the exact same story as the Wii U version, unlike the handheld versions of Colors and Generations where the stories diverged from the original. The main difference is the cutscenes are in 360p, which doesn't look good in an XL model.
Look at all these pixels, boy.
And I think it skips a few cutscenes, albeit minor ones involving the Zeddy. For convenience, I'll be showing cutscenes from the Wii U version. Firstly, the whole world building with the lost text definitely isn't planned out the best. But a random headcanon / theory I have is that it could have existed as a second planet Wisp. It could have been one of the planets grouped with the ones from Colors, and when Eggman enslaved them, it didn't get picked up by the tractor beam and was left behind, which explains all the Wisps. The lack of story involvement with them and how their role leads into forces could have been explained better though. Most of the cutscenes are just small interactions involving the Zeddy and Sonic, or the Zeddy with each other, but the main story picks up when Sonic and Eggman have to team up. Now a lot of people in the reviews have said this element is dumb because, oh, they already did that in the other games.
Yeah, well, teaming up with you feels like the end of the world, Eggman.
You've teamed up with him before.
That may be true, but keep in mind in SA2, Heroes No 6, Eggman had to form an alliance near the very end, and as a result of the other main villain. Here it's about 1/3 into the game and it's 100% Sonic's fault, so at least there's something a bit more creative here. The whole working together gimmick though isn't laid out the best, as most of the cutscenes is just them muddling around and exchanging insults. I remember when I heard about Sonic and Eggman working together I thought it would mean playable Eggman, but obviously there isn't. I guess it shows how there's very little communication between the writers and main developers with how Sonic's stories are more of an afterthought. I kinda wonder if it's Sega themselves limiting by how the stories go, seeing how most of the cutscenes are usually just 30 seconds on average, even less. I also think the story is missing sections, like there was supposed to be more dialogue between certain cutscenes. Take the one where Tails thinks Sonic trusts Eggman more than him.
And you don't trust me to do it!
What? No! I trust you, Tails. It's just that...
No, you don't. You trust Eggman more.
I feel this conflict would work better if there was a cutscene in between where Tails comes up with a plan / calculation. Eggman corrects him and thinks of something better, which Sonic agrees with, surprising Tails and questioning Sonic's chemistry with Eggman and their alliance.
True! Your robots are a reflection of your genius, Dr. Eggman.
The teaming up with Eggman scenario had potential, but didn't feel like a big focus most of the time, and the Boom series would handle this plot element a bit better, if more comedic.
Ow! What? Bro!
Certain cutscenes also have odd tonal areas, like the one which starts with Sonic making a bad pun, and 55 seconds later has Eggman violently break a communicator made of ice, and contemplates strangling someone in an overly sinister tone. Big 180 there. Again, most of the elements are flat or had lost potential, like Tails being captured, or having a moment where Sonic fully faces consequences with himself. It would have been interesting if when Tails gets captured, Eggman would have called out Sonic for some of his actions, and how his lack of proper thinking has potentially doomed him, instead of,
Tails acted for the greater good. Let's make sure his sacrifice isn't for nothing.
I'm supposed to be a sacrifice?
You know how much I sacrificed?
After this part, they could have gone and changed the tone for the rest of the story, but it's more or less the same after this. Sinister moment, goofy moment, sinister moment, goofy moment. Also obligatory, as Eddie mentioned, yeah, they're a bit of an odd bunch, and bringing back Zavok when most fans hate him isn't making it better. Garrulous64 made an interesting video on rewriting the Deadly Six to make them intimidating villains, so check that out if you like.
There's that little punk. I've been dreaming about pounding his sorry blue butt.
At this point, I think a new fresh writing team is required, considering how they've had the same ones for a decade now and have been burned out. We don't need anyone who's a massive Sonic expert, just someone who understands how the world and characters work, and make the game fully revolve around it, or vice versa. Don't need a big Days of Future Past retcon to fix things, just flow with something that works. I wanted to hate Sonic Lost World for 3DS, but upon revisiting it, there are some areas that I like, but it's crowded under a lot of moments that really bring down the enjoyment. The levels range from dull to slightly enjoyable, and it's coupled with a story that still annoy people even if they're not big Sonic fans. Now the big question, is it worse than Forces? I don't know. If you asked me a couple of months ago, I'd say this is worse. Even made a backlog post about it, but revisiting this, and then Forces a while later, changes things. Most of Forces levels are flat, but they don't drag on, and mostly have a clear vision, and don't have that frustrating feeling Lost World's levels have. Lost World tried to be a mixture of the previous gameplay types plus Galaxy, while Forces tried to be like Generations. Both were unsuccessful, but I'd say Forces handles it a bit better. The other stages function alright, and utilize Wisps in a more clever way. The main problem with Sonic's gameplay in Forces, I think, is that its physics were specifically designed for boost, hence why moving normally feels off at times, as seen with level mods. Also classic Sonic 2, but everyone talks about that. So to answer the question fully, I'd say it's one of those choices I jump back and forth to depending on when you'd ask. Right now I'd say Forces is sort of better. I know it's a low-hanging fruit right now for mockery, but give me 3 reasons why this level of style is better than some of what's here.
Am I the only sane one here?
I kind of imagine there's a timeline where the Wii U performed better, delaying the need for the Switch, and thus Forces was brought over to the Wii U, complete with a 3DS version that would either be leagues better or worse than the main version. Do I think Sonic Team should have continued with Lost World's gameplay? I'm still unsure. And I know every time people talk about this game they immediately go, I wish they kept going with this gameplay style. But I think it probably would have either been the same, or it still probably would have been inconsistent. Especially when you consider Sega's change in production after Rise of Lyric's performance, which has most likely scared Sega away from open roam gameplay for Sonic for quite some time unless they change their minds. In conclusion, give Lost World 3DS a look only for curiosity and see how it compares to Forces and its Wii U counterpart for yourself. And as you don't mind or care where the series goes at this point, I'm kinda easygoing with most big franchises at this rate, and have other series to bounce around in between. Just make something fun, have people know what they're doing, and make something that'll please the fans for a few more years. Thank you for watching. I'm still trying to find a footholding with these types of videos. Some said they liked them, so I'll see where they go. If I think of some worthy topics, I might do some more. I know there was some stuff I glossed over, mainly since some of it wasn't important or stuff already covered up with the main version, like the art style or some random other areas. Also, I didn't really want to stretch out or over-explain certain areas too much, so thankfully you won't have to wait 3 to 7 months for another part to come out. The pacing I know was a bit off in areas and the camera quality isn't the best, but this is my first time doing any type of proper game review, so keep that in mind. There should be more videos soon. I'm back in college, so if videos are less frequent, you'll know why. At the moment, I'm happy with the way most of the videos have turned out this year, though things seem to be turning around. Response like this does motivate me to do more types of videos that I want to fully continue with, so appreciate it. Thank you for watching, subscribe, and leave a like if you like Sonic!